You've probably heard it a million times, right? That religion is on its way out, that science and modernity are taking over. But is that what's really going on? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into the sociology of religion, and we're going to find out that the story is so much more interesting. Belief might not be disappearing at all. It might just be changing its shape in some really surprising ways.
So let me just start with a kind of provocative question. What if you could get all the good stuff from church? You know, the community, the singing, that feeling of inspiration, but you just took God out of the equation.
Sounds weird, right? But it's a real thing. It's called the Sunday Assembly, and it's popping up all over the world. People get together, they celebrate life, they sing pop songs at the top of their lungs, they listen to talks that make them think, and they build a real community. The one thing you won't find? Any doctrine or any talk about a deity.
And their motto is pretty great, actually. Live better, help often, wonder more. It has all the elements of what we think of as religious life, community, purpose, even awe, but it's all completely secular. Someone even called it a church with no religion. And that just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it?
You know, something like the Sunday Assembly makes you stop and ask a really huge question. What are we even talking about when we say religion? And if it's turning into things like this, is it actually disappearing or is it just evolving into something new? To figure that out, we got to start at the very beginning.
Okay, so our first stop is tackling the single biggest challenge for anyone studying this stuff. How in the world do you even define religion? It sounds simple, but trust me, it's one of the trickiest questions out there.
All right, so sociologists usually come at this from two directions. First, you have the inclusive definition. This one looks at what religion does for us, the function it serves, like creating community or answering those big, scary life questions. The only problem is, if you define it that broadly, almost anything could be a religion. On the other hand, you've got the exclusive definition. This one's way more specific. It says religion is a belief in something supernatural. It's clearer, for sure, but the risk here is that it's too narrow, and you end up ignoring things that feel religious but don't have a God. And just look at this picture. This is that inclusive definition in action. You've got shared rituals, an intense sense of community, this passionate belief in something bigger than yourself. So here's the question. Could this, being a diehard football fan, actually be a form of religion? I mean, it gives millions of people meaning and identity. It's a really interesting thought.
So, because those definitions are so tough to work with, a lot of modern sociologists go a third route. It's called social constructionism. Basically, instead of trying to slap a label on it from the outside, they ask a different question. How do people themselves use the idea of religion in their own lives? The focus shifts from some rigid definition to the messy, real, human experience of it all.
All right, now that we've got that puzzle about definitions on the table, let's rewind. Let's go back to the original detectives who first put religion under the microscope, the founding fathers of sociology themselves.
First up, Karl Marx. And you've definitely heard this one. Religion is the opium of the people. It's so easy to misunderstand that quote. He wasn't just being dismissive. For him, religion was like a painkiller for the working class, easing the suffering of a deeply unfair world. But here's the catch. By focusing on a reward in the afterlife, he argued, it kept people from fighting for a better life right here, right now, which, of course, really helped out the people in charge.
But then you have Emil Durkheim, and he had a totally different take. He looked at early societies and came up with this pretty radical idea. He thought that when people are gathered together, worshiping their gods and totems, what they're really worshiping is their own community, society itself. For Durkheim, all those rituals are just about creating this powerful group bond that holds everything together.
And then there's our third detective, Max Weber. He looked at Marx's idea and said, hold on a second. He argued that religion isn't always about keeping things the same. In fact, it can be this incredibly powerful engine for massive social change. His classic example was Protestantism, which he argued had this work ethic that was absolutely essential for the rise of modern capitalism. For Weber, an idea born in religion could literally change the world.
So, three brilliant thinkers, three very different ideas. But here's the crazy thing. They all agreed on one big prediction. They were all convinced that as the world got more modern, more scientific, that traditional religion would just fade away. They called it secularization. The question is, more than 100 years later, were they right? Well, let's look at the evidence, because this is where the story gets really good.
And this brings us to the great plot twist in our investigation. Because that simple, straightforward idea that religion is just disappearing, well, it runs into some seriously contradictory evidence when you look at the world today. These two maps show you the puzzle perfectly. So look at the one on the left. This is church attendance in Europe. See all the light colors? That means in a lot of places hardly anyone actually goes to church. But now look at the map on the right. This shows belief in God or some kind of higher power. The colors are way darker, right? Belief is still really high. So what's going on? How can so many people believe, but so few of them actually go?
Well, sociologists have a great name for this: the believing without belonging paradox. The idea is that while the big, formal religious organizations have lost a lot of their authority, maybe people are more individualistic now or just don't trust institutions, that doesn't mean private, personal belief has gone away with it. People still believe, they just don't feel like they need to belong to a club to do it.
And if you zoom out from just Europe, that whole story about religion declining gets even shakier. I mean, just look at these numbers from around the world. We're talking 96% in Ghana, 93% in Nigeria. In huge parts of the globe, especially in the global south, religion isn't just hanging on, it's thriving.
Now, of course, it's not the same everywhere. You've also got the other end of the spectrum with countries that have large atheist populations. But what this really shows us is that simple, old prediction of a single global march towards a godless world, it was just wrong. The reality is way, way more complicated. And then there's maybe the biggest puzzle piece of them all, the United States. In almost every other wealthy, industrialized nation, church attendance is pretty low. But in the US, it's a different story. Around 40% of the population attends church in a given week. This American exceptionalism is a huge wrench in the idea that being modern automatically means becoming less religious.
So where does that leave us? If the simple story of decline is wrong, what's the resolution to our mystery? Well, it looks like religion isn't disappearing so much as it's transforming, splintering and morphing into all these new and sometimes pretty unexpected forms. And to try and get a handle on all this, sociologists often group what they call new religious movements into three buckets. First, you've got world-affirming movements, which are kind of like self-help, all about unlocking your own potential. Then there's the opposite, world-rejecting groups, who see the outside world as corrupt and want to separate from it. And finally, you have world-accommodating movements, which are all about your inner spiritual life while you still live a normal life out in the world. It just shows you how incredibly diverse belief is now.
But maybe the biggest shift of all isn't happening in big groups, but inside each of us. There was this amazing study that interviewed a young nurse about her beliefs. She didn't go to any church. Instead, she described this deeply personal faith that she'd built for herself piece by piece, and she even gave it a name, Sheilaism.
Sheila's story is the perfect example of what sociologists now call lived religion. It's this idea that so many of us today are creating our own spiritual collage, a sort of bricolage, taking bits and pieces from different philosophies, traditions, and our own experiences. It might not look like a formal religion from the outside, but it's deeply meaningful to the person living it.
So here's where we land. Here's the resolution to our puzzle. The big, old traditional institutions might be getting weaker in some places, but that fundamental human drive for meaning, for community, for a sense of wonder, that's not going anywhere. It's just as strong as it's ever been. As Durkheim sort of predicted, when the old gods start to fade, new ones always seem to rise up and take their place. Which leaves us with one last massive question to chew on. If religion isn't disappearing but just transforming, what on earth is it going to look like next?